Mr. Trump, you yourself said let Governor Bush speak. Governor Bush.
Thank you, Donald, for allowing me to speak at the debate. That's really nice of you. I really appreciate that.
Or if a bunch of people with journalism degrees were coming over and driving down the wages in the press.
Just to be clear, you said you would repeal Obamacare. Absolutely. But what is the alternative? And how does that help small business?
This tax plan would cause jobs to boom, and it would let America compete with China and the world on a level playing field.
But you haven't told us how to pay for it.
But if you're not going to respond in a no-fly zone strategy, what would yours be? Candidates, we want to thank you all. We also appreciate your helping save time by talking over one another at times. That was welcome. But by all means, it was a very riveting debate. Business issues can be riveting because it wasn't about us. It's about them.
After the third GOP debate on CNBC and the moderator debacle that surrounded that event, we didn't have high hopes for the fourth debate, hosted by Fox Business this past Tuesday evening. But we were happily surprised not only by the fact that the moderators actually allowed the candidates to speak, but also by the amount of time each candidate received. This time, the candidates were encouraged to speak and address the issues, instead of wasting time fighting off ridiculous questions about media bias and about whether or not Donald Trump considers himself to be a comic book villain. With me now to discuss the GOP debate is President of Shirley and Banister Public Affairs, Diana Banister. Diana, thank you for joining me tonight.
Hi, Liz.
Now, what did you think of Tuesday night's debate moderators? Were they as fair as everyone is saying, or was that just in comparison to how poor the CNBC moderators were?
They were fantastic because they actually got to substance. What I call that debate on what was Tuesday night was refreshing, was what it was. It was something that we have wanted and needed in our party and in these debates from the beginning and just haven't had. And that's a substantive discussion about issues. And it actually has opened up the floodgates to actually comparing the candidates to each other. So we actually know that somebody's policy ideas are different than somebody else's. It's not a back and forth. It's not a gotcha question. It is actual substance and something we need to know before we go into that voting booth next year.
Right. It all comes down, in my opinion, to the agenda of the moderators. In the CNBC debate, their agenda was clearly to argue their own points against the candidates instead of allowing the candidates to argue with each other. Whereas in this Fox Business debate, their agenda was, and they stated this openly, was to be as invisible as possible to allow the candidates to speak to each other and to speak to the American voters. It made a huge difference. It's like you said, it was very refreshing. I enjoyed that debate. Now, let's talk about double standards here. Let's talk about the double standards. So the Republicans participate in debates hosted by the liberal media, by CNBC, like the third debate, by CNN, but the Democrats don't return the favor. They just stick to their own networks, to ABC, CBS, CNN. Are they afraid to go on Fox News?
Of course they are. I mean, they are in a different category altogether. We've known this from the beginning. I've talked to our staff about this. We know this is the problem. When you go into a different arena, when the mainstream media has control of these debates, and I fault at some level the RNC for agreeing to these debates in these formats. We want candidates to know and to articulate their positions on issues. We don't want gotcha questions. We don't want someone calling somebody else a name on stage. We want something that is different and, as we said, refreshing in that we can see their differences. I have a front page paper right here, the Washington Post says GOP fissures on foreign policy. We saw their differences. We can now go into the next debate with having that information and then decide as this process moves along. It is a difficult situation for all Americans to come to the conclusion of who they should vote for president. So the more fair these debates are, the better for the American people.
Right, and I'm glad you brought up the topic of the RNC. So after the CNBC debate, the RNC stepped in and said that the February debate, which was supposed to be hosted by NBC, they're no longer allowed to host it. And after all that controversy. So now the February debate is up for grabs. In your opinion, who would do the best job moderating that debate?
You would, Liz.
Good. That was the answer I was going to lead you to. One American News has actually put a bid in for this debate. We have an open letter to the RNC on our website about hosting it.
I mean, the fact is we have so many different outlets now. Conservative outlets, moderate, mainstream ones, but something that's different and unique. You're reaching a very unique audience. You're reaching an audience that is actually interested in policy ideas. They're actually interested in who they're going to vote for next year. Some people in the mainstream media just aren't, and they want to see us fighting. They don't want Republicans to look good on TV. That's not their goal. Their goal is to get people to argue and to boost their ratings. If they boost their ratings, they get more ad revenue. If they get more ad revenue, then they're in business for a much longer time. So I would say broaden it, make it, Rush Limbaugh. We've advocated for Rush Limbaugh or Mark Levin or you, Liz, or Glenn Beck, someone else to do these debates and really get to the heart of what the American people need.
Right, and the moderators would make a huge difference in how the debates go. But in your opinion, when talking about the formats of the debates, are these the best formats to really showcase the ideas of the candidates, to compare and contrast what they think on each issue? Or what do you think is the best format to do this?
Well, the problem with the RNC, they've laid down the law. This is how they're going to be. If they're going to have these debates on mainstream television, they at least should vet the questions. That's A. But B, the format of Tuesday night's debate was fantastic. They let the people actually talk and discuss issues between each other. Then they went back to the moderator. It's very difficult to keep them controlled when you have 10 people on stage. So those things are difficult. As it whittles down, I would say a much broader forum type setting in which they could talk for a little bit longer time. Heritage Foundation, Heritage Action actually had a debate forum in South Carolina. It was not sanctioned by the RNC, but it actually allowed these candidates to answer questions and then, as we said before, show the policy differences between the candidates.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Fox Business debate was a good start for that because they allowed the candidates to have longer amounts of time to talk about each of the issues before allowing them to have the back and forth to compare and contrast in the shorter answers. So I would agree that a longer, substantial portion to talk about the topics would do a service to the American people. Diana, I appreciate you coming on tonight. I hope you'll come back. Coming up, history is repeating itself. A look at Iran in the past and how our deal has gone bad. Next.